All right. Well, good evening, everybody, or good afternoon, or good morning, I think, for some of us. Welcome to our second Alternative Breaks GW community wide event. There are lots of different faces here that you may or may not recognize, but I'll introduce myself first. My name is Will Hoadley Brill. I'm the executive chair of the Alternative Breaks program. And we are a service learning program here on campus that typically sends students
Hello.
around the country as well as around the world to serve with different community
Hello.
partners. This year, however, we are not able to travel for obvious reasons.
Hello.
So we are partnering with our past community partners in a virtual setting, which is really exciting. So tonight we have an event with the Tandana Foundation. And the Tandana Foundation is a nonprofit organization that offers support for community initiatives in Ecuador and Mali, as well as intercultural volunteer experiences. The Alternative Breaks program has partnered with them in Ecuador in years past, and we are so excited to be working with their Mali operations this year through this event. So I'm mostly not going to be speaking, which is great. And so I'll go ahead and pass it over to Anna.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Will, and thank you all for joining. It's fun to see your names right now. Hopefully, maybe we'll see your faces a little bit later when we're asking questions and those kinds of things. And we've loved hosting GW Alternative Breaks groups in Ecuador in the past. And we're excited to now be able to bring you a program from our work in Mali. And before we begin, I want to explain that we're going to have simultaneous interpretation. We have Francois Chauvet and Max Chauvet who are going to help us with our interpretation. And I am about to start the interpretation feature. And once I do that, you'll have an option to choose your language. And so if you want to listen in English, please go ahead and select English as the language. You also have an option to mute the original audio or to hear it at a lower volume in the background, which I personally think is cool, but choose whatever you prefer. And if you want to listen in French, you can just leave interpretation off or you can select French. And that will work for you. So let me turn that on so we can make sure everyone gets it, okay? So now you should have gotten an option to pop up with the languages there. And now I'm very pleased to introduce to you our two speakers. They're both calling in from Mali and they work together to lead Tandana's team in Mali. And first speaking will be Musa Tembine. He's from the village of Kansongo. He has an associate's degree in agronomy and a bachelor's degree in community development. And he's been leading Tandana's program in Mali since it first started around 2007. And we also have Husseini Pamatek. Husseini is from the village of Saldini in Mali, and he has a bachelor's degree in geographical development. And he has been the local supervisor for Tandana for about 5 years now. And they're going to share with you about some of the things that they do to set up these projects and also share a few experiences that they've had in the field, and then they'll be glad to answer whatever questions you might have. Ok, donc merci beaucoup, Moussa, c'est à vous.
Ok, excusez pour la voix.
Okay, good. Hello. I'm sorry, I have a little cold. So thank you for this presentation. And I greet everybody. Hello, everyone. And I would like to present to you a bit our programs for development in Mali. So Mali, for its development, is working with a lot of stakeholders. We have bilateral partnerships and international partnerships. And we have Tandana Foundation as one of our partners. I'd like to talk to you about two projects, two community projects that we have. And when we talk about community development, that means all the series of actions that we take to solve a problem in the community and to improve life conditions. And to have this community development, we need the participation of all the inhabitants of that community. The participation of the different stakeholders in Mali, well, this has begun since independence in the 1960s. We noticed that there are many big differences among our partners, and they also have different ways of approaching the problems. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit how Tandana works, their approach, how Tandana works in Mali. Since 2006, we began to work in the region of Banganera, what we call the Dogon country. And our work is first to work with the people, that is, to know them, know what their needs are, and to establish friendship relationship with them, and to build trust. And the inhabitants, when they have this trust, we have gained their trust, they are going to share with us what the possible solutions are to the problems they have. And then they ask the foundation to work together. So what we do is first get everybody together to see what actions we're going to carry out. And that's why it's important what we as a local population can do. What can they lead, what can they carry out, and therefore they're going to ask Tandana to come to the village, and they have a meeting with the whole village, and that's how we start talking to see how we can work together. Tandana Foundation does not come with a made-up project. It's the village that explains what their problems are, and Tandana Foundation walks with them, so to speak. And this is how we work in the Dogon region, and we have been able, through time, to gain the trust of the local population. And we have been doing this since the 1960s. So right now, I would like to explain a little bit one of the projects that we have, which we call a grain bank. And once in this Dogon region, people will plant millet and sorghum and rice and beans. And we depend a lot on rain, on rainfall. And it's when the rain season starts, that's when they plant the millet. So we depend on the weather. Since 1970, there has been a dry spell in the country. And that is why, since that date, the population is not able to produce the millet necessary for consumption. We noticed that what the population produces, it can feed them for 9 months, 6 months, depending on the rain. And the population has been facing a situation where you've been planting, but the planting season, they don't have millet available for consumption. And sometimes this is hoarded by sellers. And so when they have to go and buy, very often they will have to travel and leave the work in the fields. So this is a period of the year which is very difficult, because it is precisely the time when they need to work in the fields, and they also need to eat more because they're working more. But once again, is when the millet becomes rare, they're exhausted. We call it a survival period or a bridging period because we have to go from one harvest to the other. And so we work with them, and the villagers saw that they had the capability of building the warehouses, and they needed, of course, to improve. They need to put doors, windows, and that's when they requested help from the Tandana Foundation. So the Tandana helped them build the warehouse, and afterwards, the Tandana Foundation asked the inhabitants. I'm sorry, the villagers also chose the people who would manage the whole warehouse. And once they were able to buy the cereals and store them, then the Fontana Foundation would help also for training, with training. And we were then able to store and sell to the local population at a just price, at the same price uh, they get at harvest time. And this is precisely where Tandana Foundation is helping us. Here you can see the formation they give. And so the cereal bank began working, and we organized a team to run and was in charge of controlling all the sales, all the control, supported by Tandana. And they also went to see the other warehouses to see if they were working well, if the documents were kept, paperwork was done, and if they noticed things that were wrong, they would try to find a solution, and also creating awareness for the people to know about these projects. So once the project has been chosen and identified by the population, and the committee represents the population, after the whole project has been launched, then there's a follow-up, there's a supervision. And I think this process is one of the strong points of the Tandana Foundation in Mali that sets it apart from other national and international stakeholders. Another example, they did a study on the different cereal banks that existed in the region. And this study showed that from 2006 to 2016, they found 16 points of sale, which means that there were a lot of stakeholders that tried to set up a system for the sale of the cereals and therefore solve the problem of shortages during this transition period. When they checked how these 16 points of sales were functioning, they saw that there were only 4 of them that were working with a cereal bank that had a warehouse, they had a stock, and they had a committee to run the whole operation. And the other, in other points of sales, unfortunately, the funds that were used sometimes were misspent, they were stolen, and sometimes they wouldn't have any documents, any paperwork to do the control. Out of 16 points of sale, there are already 12 that have closed, that are not functioning anymore due to these problems. So the study that was carried out showed that these cereal banks did not have partnerships that would allow them to control afterwards, to operate them. Two of the ones at work were set up by Tandana, and two others were financed by the government of Mali. The government has a fund, but they don't have warehouses, they don't have millet. So basically, we can say that only the cereal banks that were created by Tandana were functioning. The ones uh, were having a lot of trouble in putting the cereal, making the cereal available to the people. So once again, our conclusion was that the cereal banks that were set up by the Tandana Foundation are still functioning with all the documents necessary, with all the paperwork, and with the supervision of the local people. And this is really a service to the population to be able to feed itself during the transition period that is so difficult between two harvests. This is an example that I wanted to share with you. And this is already, let's say, old history. This was set up in 2016. And today, in the region of Wandon, thanks to the support of the Tandana Foundation, we have now three cereal banks, four cotton banks, and eight activities, generating activities. That's what we call the transformation industry. That is, it requires people that need a certain formation. So all these help that was set up for the benefit of the population, the foundation keeps a close eye on them. Uh, we help them to set up the project, and after that, we continue to support them to make sure that if there's a possibility of continue to help the population. But we also always ask them, what can we do? What needs to be done? And it's that approach that allows us to guarantee the actions during a long time, and thanks to the local committee set up by the villagers. There was another anecdote that I wanted to share with you, and this is something that happened at Saudami. We worked with the women in this region. You can see them here. And after the winter season, they work the cotton. They make the strings, and they weave them. So this is a source of cash. They work out the cotton. So thanks to the Tandana Foundation, they set up a revolving fund to buy the cotton and be able to work it. This region is north of Mali, and at some point, there was the same situation. After the harvest, the cotton was hard to find, so the foundation organized these women to make cotton available at cheap prices when their prices were high, so they were able to stock it. And each woman, according to the work she could do, she would come to the warehouse, she would transport it, and she sells the products, and she's able to pay back the cotton that she bought and she gets a great price for the cotton she uses. We set up this bank, and last week the local people, Gasmani, that are based in Pandama, they started with a financing project from Canada to at least try to help the children that are to continue their studies, that had dropped out of school, and they were looking for a place they could study to help them catch up and to be able to send them back to school and have them have training, formation, and be able to go back to school. So this was a back to school program. So to start that project, the NGO did not prepare the project. They didn't go to talk to the villagers. They just sent a teacher there. And he went there. He came with all his stuff, all his papers to the village. And after the first day, he asked the village head, where am I going to teach classes? It says, oh, that's no problem. You were sent by this NGO to teach. So let's just begin. And uh, the they asked the village head asked, "Oh, you guys are not using this place for the cotton work. Let's turn it into a school classroom." And say, wait," said the women. I mean, uh, this is this is a warehouse for our cotton. You cannot use it. And what's going to happen if the foundation comes and asks what we did with this place? Have we been using it to store the cotton? They're going to come next month. And so if we give you our warehouse as a classroom, this is not going to work for the foundation. So the lady, the head of the local committee, of the cotton committee, explained the situation. And she said, no, no. This cannot be a classroom. This is something for the village, yes, but the women's committee has to run this place. And if you do that, where are we going to put the cotton? So what we decided is that they had to tell this other NGO to wait, to be patient, and to work together, but not this way, because otherwise the cotton banks would disappear. So the teacher that had arrived with all his suitcases and books, well, he wasn't able to start his teaching project because the foundation had not prepared the project, had not talked to the local population, and had not prepared the whole project for the children. They just dropped from an airplane into the village. And so that created a problem, that created a situation. So I think that's different approach. That's what really sets apart the Tandana as a stakeholder, as a partner in Mali. So this is how Tandana has helped us in projects that are long-lasting, that are working. And the key is to talk to the people, to involve them in the project. And this is for the good of the community, because the community knows stuff. They have their own know-how, and we have to respect that. And so that's what I wanted to share with you this evening. And so this is it. And if you guys have any questions, I will be very glad to answer them. I thank you for your attention and for being here. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup, Moussa. Je pense que nous allons passer
So thank you very much, Musa. I think we're going to give the floor to Musini.
aux questions.
And after Musini, we'll answer any questions, okay?
Donc, Ouseni,
So we give the floor to Usini.
Bonsoir tout le monde.
So, good evening, everybody. I am very happy to be here this evening with you. Well, it's night here already, and I like to share my experience in my work with the Tandana Foundation in Mali. So, as my colleague was explaining uh, how Tandana works in these development projects, before sharing with you some anecdotes, I'd like to take up a few points he mentioned on the creation of cereal banks in our region. Very recently, not less than 2 months ago, there were the two banks set up by the government that were run by the local authorities. And this was run by the city hall, by the local mayor. And they presented a request to Tandana. They asked for Tandana's support to put a new roof. And they wanted to see also how Tandana runs or helps run the cereal banks. And my colleague explained the key is to follow on the work, to supervise it, and also to give training to form them. So we need to find people in the village to run the place, to give reports to the community, and to help them run these grain banks. And this is what I wanted to add to what my colleague has said. So even, oh, I'm sorry, so the roof that was, the wind pulled it out, and the local city hall had to ask Tandana for support to help fix the roof and also run the cereal bank. Now, my personal experience with the foundation is, well, from when I started working in my country, and the way they worked with the community, creating awareness, working in partnership, that really touched me. An anecdote that I saw in my village of Saint-Denis, and this was over 6 years ago, uh, there is an NGO that came in, and they were in Balangra, and they chose to build a warehouse in my village. This is in my village. We used to have a lot of maraîchage, that is, after the local crop, we have to work in the fields to raise, for example, onions, and a lot of to fight against poverty. And after the dry season, after the winter season, we would work raising onions, and this is to help the family. This is like a second crop. And they were in Belgrade. They chose for the situation was that in my village we weren't doing these second crops anymore. There was a lack of water, and because of that, we stopped working on this market garden production. So that was the problem in my village. The people would not try to work on these second gardens, and we needed help to work to improve this. So they start working on the shallots or onions banks, something similar to the cereal banks or the grain banks. And once you finish the first crop, you can plant a second crop. But the difference with Tandana and the other foundation is that they didn't do any follow-up. No one was following, supervising the work. The warehouses began to crumble down, and actually, money was wasted. I mean, this was very different from Tandana Foundation. We could see that Tandana listened to the committees of villages that were set up, and they would work with the village to see what different measures could be taken to prevent these kind of problems. And it's true, sometimes the villages would not be interested in building something that wouldn't be good for the village. So there was no dialogue. The other foundation wouldn't be talking with us. So the key here is you have to ask the population for their opinion. You have to ask them what's good for their community. And that's the big difference between Tandana Foundation and the other stakeholders. The other NGOs, they just come in, they don't ask anything. But Tandana has been aware that there are people who know things, people who want to work, that are committed to helping their village. So this is what I wanted to share with you guys, because I think this is a big, big difference between Tandana Foundation and the other NGOs that have come into our region. So thank you very much. And if you have any questions, I will be very happy to answer them. And of course, this sharing of ideas can certainly enrich us all and help us how to make things happen. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup, Useni. Merci
Thank
beaucoup.
you. Thank you, Sini.
So now we would love to open it up to questions. So please feel free to either write your question in the chat or raise your hand, and we'll call on you and you can unmute yourself and ask your question. We'd love to create a conversation here. And both Musa and Husseini are very happy to share about any questions you have.
I can go ahead. Oh, sorry about that. I can go ahead and get the ball rolling a little bit. Would you mind? I know this is. Yeah, could you talk a little bit about the role of volunteers and like people from around the world when they come with your programs? Like I mentioned earlier, Outbreaks used to do that. And I'd love to know just a little bit about what international volunteers, what role they serve in Mali, in Ecuador, or just for the Tandana Foundation in general.
Vous étiez en silence.
I'm not sure he heard the question.
Vous étiez en silence. Hein?
J'ai entendu, il dit le rôle des bénévoles pour le développement, pour la contribution.
Des volontaires.
Oui. Oui.
Okay, yes, I got the question. Thank you. Okay, in my experience, I have only worked with volunteers from Tandana Foundation, and the role, we weren't ready for that. I wasn't thinking of them. At first, I didn't think that volunteers would come in and work and help. And And I didn't draw a difference between the personnel and the volunteers. So when I started talking to them, what happens is if uh, even if somebody comes from overseas, there's no difference. We try to work together, to talk, to pull together, and we're going to do it together. We're going to bring water, we're going to build the warehouses, and this is always done together. So the role is first to collaborate with the community without drawing any difference and between them and us. It's just to work together, to share the objectives and to work together. That's what I think.
Moussa, ton micro est en silence toujours.
Micro de l'ordinateur.
Voilà.
D'après les Américains, I'm sure.
Sorry, his mic was off. Okay.
Voilà. Aujourd'hui, vraiment, la communauté au niveau
In the community, in the region, we are very well of the situation in Mali. Right now, we have, let's say, a lot of volunteers from America in our community. And my colleague just said, the role is in this international cultural experience. We know that each person has his or her own culture, there are differences in lifestyle. And these volunteers come into the village and they try to learn the culture, the traditions of the community. And at the same time, they're going to teach about their own culture, of their know-how. So it's a win-win situation in this cultural exchange. These volunteers so many of them are in good health, in good conditions. But when they come to our community, they don't feel superior. They place themselves at the same level of the people. And this is what builds trust with the community. And what we miss right now due to the lack of security conditions, we miss the volunteers that used to come.
Ok, il y a une autre question.
So there's another question. How many ongoing projects does the Tandana Foundation have now? And what has been the effect of COVID? So there's two questions. Again, one first question is how many projects does Tandana have right now? And on the other hand, what are the effects of COVID in your village? Okay, thank you. Thank you for this question. How many activities does the foundation have? Well, I can't really tell you exactly how many projects they have. Well, the answer is zero because it's not it's a project of the community, not ours. And we walk with them. We accompany different projects in the communities. And maybe we can tell you the different fields where we work. We work in education. We work in help to single mothers. And we also give training in the fight. I'm sorry, I missed what it was. They work, I'm sorry, in school gardeners, student mothers, and also in food security. So we have several grain banks. We have several cotton banks. So we work in the defense of culture, of erosion control, and also reforestation. Each year, the Tandana Foundation helps the communities to organize reforestation campaigns. And this is done during the winter season. Our colleague here is responsible for this. And one of the activities of the Tandana Foundation is the EPC program, alphabetization of women, literacy programs for women. This is quite a big issue. Because if we want women to have cash producing activities, they need some literacy and leadership. And this, we do this too, form women for literacy and leadership. This is, but to say exactly how many activities is, I think maybe my colleague can add something on this. But before I give him the floor, I would like to speak about COVID. That was the other question. The situation right now is like in the similar to the other countries. There is a lot of people that are affected, and there's been a lot of deaths, and it's fatal in many cases. And one of the main problems is that we don't have tracing. And you could have people that are affected by COVID, but when we have a case, we have to send into Mabuko for analysis, and this takes time and it's a lot of waste. So official numbers, well, you know, are way too low. There's a lot more cases in reality. The Tandana Foundation has included fight against COVID in all its activities. We create awareness in the different people where we work with them. We create awareness on this field, and we have set up a health center. The Tandana Foundation has given kits to do proper hand washing and to help the communities to fight against this pandemic. And we have these masks like this one, see? The foundation has helped us, and everybody looks very well, very cool with this face. And well, unfortunately, in the other village, people don't use face masks, but when they come to our community, they see everybody wearing them. So that's a good example. And this is what I wanted to share with you. If I may add something, I'd like to add on the number of projects that we have, like my colleague said, there are several fields where we work. I'm gonna say 14 or 15. But for example, actually they're larger because, for example, if you think about women's literacy, there's a lot being done there. And there's a lot of aspects. There's alphabetization, literacy, there's leadership, there's creation of association, and how to run them, financing them, administration. These are all these aspects that we have to work on. And for example, also when we work in the field of environment protection, there's a lot of facets to this field. you have to think about fighting erosion control, reforestation, water. There's so many aspects in one field. So we can say also that we have 15 or 16 projects, yes, but each project is pluridimensional. You have a lot of aspects, and this is always based on what the population asks. And sometimes it's only a small activity, and but even so, we help them to develop all these small activities within a larger project. Now, COVID, uh, our role with the Tandana Foundation. Well, first, it's an illness we really don't know. People don't know about it. They get information through the media, through TV, radio, and unfortunately, there is villages where there's no communication, there's no radio, no TV, and so we go in there. We go in there to create awareness, to teach the people, work with the people on prevention measures. And if COVID is a project for us. And but again, one of each project has a lot of facets. You have to think awareness. You have to set up a committee to help people in a village so that the whole community, uh, even if we can't go all the time, the local committee takes over and teaches, creates awareness on the different measures. And if, another aspect is we've been, for example, going to the bus stations and to talk to the people and to teach them what precautions they have to take. Another facet is the sanitary kits. We give them kits for proper hand washing, also the distribution of face masks. This is mine, but we have to teach people. Once you use it, you have to wash it. So that's our role. First, we go, explain, create awareness, and also go to the village where there's no mass media and communication is free. We go them, we teach them, we uh, help them become aware of all these problems and all the measures that they can take to fight. Thank you very much. To work at the best level with the communities, the foundation had also organized a series of awareness raising programs through a radio station and what the symptoms are, how one can protect oneself and their families. And the foundation has begun this in Tomoso. I'm sorry, in the Tomoso language for people who don't speak French. And we try to raise awareness through the radio programs in the local language. Uh, was that clear enough? Did I answer your question?
Oui, merci beaucoup.
Oh, yeah, that was good.
Okay, other questions? Other questions, anybody? Are any of you thinking about going into development work or something like that? Est-ce que vous avez des questions que vous voulez poser aux étudiants?
Maybe you two guys have questions that you want to ask our students. Oh, yeah. I could ask. well, what we share is our small experience of development in Mali that we wanted to share with you. So my question would be, how do you see this way of working of the Tandana Foundation? Or can you think of other ways of working, other approaches to this type of work?
Yeah. Well, thank you for your question. The Alternative Breaks Program, which is what, the organization that is sponsoring this event, is dedicated to community-based solutions to problems. So as you all were talking about really approaching the community with their issues, what they were in need of, that is definitely what we like to focus on. It's been phrased in many different ways, but I think one of the best phrased way of explaining it is an asset-based approach to problem solving or approach to development. So instead of approaching a community and asking a question or posing the question, what's missing? What don't you have? What do you need help with? Instead asking, what do you have? What's working well? How can we support those programs? Which I think is exactly what you all explained. And I think that's why we partnered and continue to partner with the Tandana Foundation so closely, is because we have really similar philosophies in community development and community service. And we are really happy to support such an awesome organization that has this kind of philosophy that we share.
Thank you. Well, that's great, and I think you're right that that's very much aligned with, you know, our Tandana philosophy, and your Alt Breaks philosophy is very much aligned. And that's one thing I think about a lot is, you know, so many nonprofit organizations and NGOs, they're always looking for problems, and then, you know, they're looking at like, what are the problems, and then trying to find solutions to them. But I think it's really helpful, like you said, you can kind of turn that around and say instead, like, what are our opportunities? You know, what do you have and what do we have, and what opportunities do we have to bring that together in a way that's going to be really positive for everyone. So I appreciate you mentioning that.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions for Musa and Husseini?
It sounds like our questions are answered. And I would like to thank the Tandana Foundation. Musa and Husseini, thank you so much for spending your evenings with us. What time is it where you are?
Bon, ici, il est 0h, hein? Donc, nous sommes au 0h. Nous sommes au...
0 sorry, it's midnight. Oh, sorry, this is tomorrow already.
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm maybe instead of saying thank you, I should say I'm sorry. But I thank you so much for choosing this. You're very...
C'est notre travail.
Hey, don't thank us. I mean, this is our job. We love it. I mean,
well, that's very good to hear. Thank you for telling us so much about what you do, what you love to do, because we do love to hear about it. And I just wanted to also thank all of those. I'd like to thank Anna, and Maria Jose for being here and figuring this stuff out, and Francois and Max for doing the translation. Thank you so much. And of course, thank you to all of you that were able to attend tonight. Before you go, I just really quickly want to let you know that the Alternative Breaks program, if you're interested in community development work and other issues, social justice issues in the United States, as well as in an international context, our fully virtual, fully free service experiences are still open for participants. If you're interested, you can go to go.gwu.edu/springaltbreak and just learn a little bit more about what we're doing this year as a program. And of course, visit the Tandana Foundation's website to learn more about what they're doing and what they always do, the awesome work that they do. So once again, thank you all so much for coming. I hope you have a great rest of your evening or morning, and I hope to speak to you all soon. Thank you so much.
Merci beaucoup.
Thanks
Merci.
very much, Will. And we at Tandana would love to continue partnering with GW Alt Breaks in the future. We loved having your groups join us in Ecuador. So hopefully in the future that'll be possible again. And then you can go see Maria Jose and her team in Ecuador, which would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
And thanks so much to all of you who've been here. And we really appreciate you joining us. It's great to see such a good group here.